In about 2 months, I'll be celebrating my 25th year in recovery. So I'm still working on that, and it is a work in progress. But I've been doing some looking back and remembering what I need to be doing today, and in a sense, taking an inventory of my life and saying, am I on track? Am I building those things into my life that I need to be building? Am I on the way that Jesus is calling me to walk? And I remember that when I started this journey, I knew that I needed to develop some new habits. And I knew from working with other people that had started these 12-step programs that the habit I needed to develop was going to 90 meetings in 90 days. These guys weren't serious. They were very serious. That if I wanted what they had, then I was going to have to do my part. And I began to do that. And as the fog began to lift, I became aware of an amazing prayer that we started meetings with. And I learned that was the Serenity prayer. And that was completely new to my experience, which seems odd as a pastor. But I grew up in a tradition that dismissed those around us that didn't have the exact theology that we had. And one of the labels you could hang on people is to say they were a liberal, social, gospel Christian, which really meant we weren't really sure they were a Christian at all. And Reinhold Niebuhr fell into that category. But oh my goodness, as I began to learn more about Niebuhr and about his contribution, and just fell in love with the Serenity prayer. What is a surprise to those in 12-step meetings is we only use the opening lines of the Serenity prayer. That it, in a sense, has, for me, 4 different stanzas. And we're taking advantage of the first one, which is absolutely crucial. You can't start the journey without the first. But there's more to it. So there's a bigger blessing there as we look at it. So that's what we're talking about here at St. Andrew. But those opening lines, God grant me to accept the serenity, to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are things in every one of our lives that we cannot change. And what makes us crazy is trying to change those things, trying to will that which cannot be willed. I cannot control the people, places, or things in my life. The more I try and control them, the crazier I'm going to be. I do have control of my life. And this is a prayer that begins us on that journey of not worrying and being fearful about that which we cannot control, but to be active in addressing those issues, habits in our lives that need to be changed, need to be redirected, to build in new habits, to walk our lives in a different direction than maybe we're heading right now. And that takes courage. Courage of the heart. It means looking inside and seeing where we're broken, and being willing to acknowledge there is a God and I am not God. And maybe God has something for us if we will accept it. Now, as Niebuhr developed this prayer, we first hear it coming out of him in around 1934. And he would pray it in different settings and sermons and classes and so on, and people were learning it and repeating it. He continued to massage it, and so that a later version in the early 50s, he'd tweaked the opening lines a little bit. He'd added a couple of words. He said, God, give us grace to accept with serenity. That maybe we need the gift of grace even to be able to accept the serenity. That the very act of surrender, so that we can get to that place of acceptance, requires God to do something in us that we can't do for ourselves. And that's the nature of grace. That phrase I heard in the rooms that I don't always hear in church. that God will do for us what we can't do for ourselves, and to trust that. And so Niebuhr said, this takes more than just my willing to accept, that I need to just let go in grace so that God's Spirit through me can move me to acceptance, which might lead to experience of some serenity in the midst of real life. And it has to do with the things that cannot be changed. And I realized as I began to look at my life, I was spending a lot of time and energy filled with fear and anxiety, but the things that I could not change. Trying to meet people's expectations that I could not meet. Trying to do things that weren't the right thing for me to be doing. That I kept doing these crazy things and getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and it kept getting darker and darker and darker. But when I moved just those little bits of acceptance towards the things that cannot be changed, then I was able to begin to exercise the courage to change the things which Niebuhr said in the earlier prayers that can be changed, and then he said should be changed. And we could spend a lot of time fussing about this. I think for me today is that can was a good place for me to start. Should's a good place for me to be today. There's things that I've changed in my life that I could change. There's some things that I didn't think I can change, but still should be changed in my life. And it's almost like this is not something that gets done over a period of a few years. This is a lifetime journey. And so I'm feeling like I needed to discover that there was more to this than just the can, that there was a little more push to it with the should. But the key is still the wisdom to know the difference between one and the other. And for this, I need help. This is where I need dear brothers and sisters, a community around me to help me sort this out. People that I can say, here's where I'm at. This is what I'm wrestling with. And they can say to me, that's God's job, not yours. You need to stop doing that. And then I'm saying, that's God's job. And they're going, no, actually, that's your job. You need to step up in that area. And I need people around me to help me with that wisdom. But I'm just so grateful today that God's not finished with me yet, and that the journey continues, and that I have such a prayer as the Serenity Prayer. Amen.